I wanted to just talk about sort of how we define success, or how you might think about success when it comes to these projects. And there's sort of two ways of looking at it. One is from the standpoint of project management, which is the value added to the client. And I just have some tips in each of these areas. And the other is team management perspective, or the quality of your experience as a volunteer. So on the project management side, these are some things that I think are important. One is that you ensure the appropriate involvement of the client's top management and board. We try really hard to make sure that these clients are committed to these projects, but it's something on an ongoing basis you have to confirm as you're working on them. If it seems at some time that the client or the board is not on board with your doing the project, that's a big red flag that you need to come back to me and talk about, talk directly to the client about, because when clients aren't committed to consulting projects, there's really not much point in you spending your time on them. So listening carefully and respecting the client's expertise. They usually have the content knowledge when it comes to their topic, their area, and it's important to realize that. Setting realistic expectations about what can be achieved by the team and implemented by the client is another really important thing. Sometimes we have teams that do fabulous work and come up with, the 24 recommendations that the client should implement, and it's just not useful because the client might be able to do 2 things, or the kinds of things that are being recommended take so much additional work that the client just cannot implement. So it's something to think about, because many times the resources available to the client after the team leaves are going to be very minimal. The staff may be relatively maxed out already, and so you have to constantly be thinking, what can they actually do once we're gone? Sometimes we have alumni who stay around and try to help implement, which is really nice, but that's not our standard model. So checking in frequently to see if client expectations are being met and adjusting if not. I recently had a really, what I thought was crack team working with great leaders with a fabulous client. It was very high profile for various reasons. And at the end of the project, I found out that the client really wasn't very satisfied with what the team had done, and it was partly because the expectations of the board had been different, where the executive director had been the primary contact, and the board had been the one who had initiated the idea of having a team. And during the project, they'd been working with the executive director the whole time. The project was over, and the board was like, well, that wasn't what we wanted. And that was very discouraging. So constantly checking in with who is expecting what, and if the expectations seem out of line, you have 2 choices. You can either change what the team is doing to meet those expectations, or you can have a really heart-to-heart talk about the expectations not being reasonable. Because it's not what you do, it's whether it meets their expectations as to whether they'll be happy or not. So, and then utilizing available resources and tools, and I'll talk about that in a minute, of those for you. So as I said, the evaluation methods we use for the client are immediate, 1 year, and 3 year. That's our current setup. On the team management side, your experience, we found it's really important that the project leaders put together a clearly defined draft of the work plan in advance of your kickoff meetings. And we say draft because we want the volunteers on the team to be a part of that work plan. However, the reason we ask that there be some work done before you're brought in is because historically, when we didn't have that structure, the teams would take a couple months to get going because they would be trying to figure out who was doing what and what the project really was. And so we changed the structure to have at least a draft of the work plan done, so that when you meet with your leaders today and in your first kickoff meeting, and I hope most of the work plans, there are at least drafts at this point, but if not, there should be soon, then you can modify it based on your own input, but you at least have something to start with so you can kind of hit the ground running. Regular meeting schedules are really important. This is very hard for a large group of very busy people on these teams, and sometimes people change them, and you can rotate the responsibility for setting up. But one of the things, if you can set up a regular time, that makes everybody's life a lot easier. Balancing the workload is very important, and using your best team management and people skills. Our last training was Maggie Neal. She gave a fabulous presentation on teams and minority voice and so forth, so that was the focus of that training. And it's on our website if you want to look at the last training. All of her was very well received. But so we try to help people in those areas. And if you haven't taken touchy-feely for a while, you can take it again as an alumni. And then remaining flexible and adapting to team member constraints, changing client circumstances. They always happen within teams that people's situations change, and trying to be as communicative as you can about your own limitations. If you see something coming where you're not going to be able to follow through, helping your team to know that so that they can then come back. And we, remember, do have people who did not get matched to projects. So if you are on one of the projects that was oversubscribed and suddenly half your team develops a disease and they can't operate anymore, you can come back to us and ask for additional team members. So, but usually only if it's for a project that was oversubscribed. So again, on the volunteer side, our evaluation method is the immediate Zoom ring surveys that you will receive right after the projects are completed.